You weren't kidding around when you titled this book. The notion of a coming wave is, I think what we're all very aware that we're kind of sitting in, about to ride through. And I think it would be helpful for you to sort of give us a little bit of framework in terms of what did you anticipate in terms of the speed, right, with which AI would come not just an integral part of our lives, but an integral part of the conversation about our lives.
Predictions are like the essence of intelligence. Intelligence is the ability to deploy the correct tool, if you like, to the right problem at the right time. That's kind of what attention is. When we direct our attention or our processing power, use different types of attention, emotional, logical attention, slow or fast attention, given problem, given our understanding of what that problem is. And for the last 15 or maybe even 20 years, you could argue that prediction algorithms, which essentially do the same thing, like take very large amounts of abstract data and find patterns in that data such they can predict what's likely to come next in some sequence. Those algorithms have been getting incrementally better. And we sort of detected a pretty consistent function that drives their progress, which is for every order of magnitude more compute we apply and a proportionally large amount of training data, the models are able to predict in more complex environments. And that trend has held true for the best part of 15 years, pretty much since 2010. In fact, the amount of computation used to train the largest models has increased by 10x every year for about 13 years. And obviously we've seen this, and it's called a scaling law, of improving capabilities with every new order of magnitude more compute. So that's kind of the core, that was the core underpinning for the book. It was like pretty clear that there is something that isn't just speculation. This isn't just sci-fi. This isn't just me, playing political scientist. It's like there is an empirical trajectory which we can actually observe, and it seems to be very predictable. And then we can sort of then start to imagine, okay, well, out of that, what are the social and political consequences, which I think are also reasonably, perhaps not as predictable, or certainly not as predictable, but certainly you can have some pretty good intuitions about what's likely to happen when our models can basically perform as well as humans at various different capabilities or tasks.
There's a practical trajectory, and then there is this sort of like emotional, societal, cultural trajectory, which I instantly go to. A friend of mine sent me a still image of myself doing dances I was not doing when that photograph was taken of me, and it's interesting and funny, but for those of us who do have a public kind of print, of course that's where my mind goes. What is the trajectory of this? And I wonder if you can tell us, what should we expect? I have a 17 and a 20-year-old, right? What should we expect in terms of capability and in terms of future projections? What's coming in the next 5 years?
What's come so far helps us to understand what's going to come. So far, there's been two components to the wave of AI. First was recognition. So AI algorithms that could understand the content of images or transcribe audio or translate languages. They may feel like, to a non-technical person, like very, very different domains. Like, how can the same algorithm, understand cats in images and the words that I'm using now and so on? Actually, to a computer, they're just relationships between subparts of the data set. And those relationships are highly predictive. And so once you could get an algorithm to do very good recognition, inverse of recognition is obviously generation. It understands, what a cat is. Why couldn't it generate a novel cat in an image? And if it understands what wings are and what pink is, why couldn't it generate a pink cat with wings?
It can also make a pig jump on a trampoline with a chicken on its back, which really pleased me.
So generation is the flip side of recognition. What then happens when you have perfect generation? Generation is a snapshot in time. It's like a still frame in a photograph. Actions are sequences of correct generations in the right order, like a movie by frame by frame by frame, prediction by prediction by prediction, suggestion, recommendation, generating a PDF, an image, a video, calling an API, like producing a Word document, making an Excel sheet. And suddenly, if it's true that you could generate in, say, 100 sequence length very accurately, very perfectly. It starts to look like human activity. As a knowledge worker, that's kind of my job. I sit at my computer typing stuff, sending emails and making project plans and blah, 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 blah. And so the third wave that is coming is the AQ, the actions quotient. We've had the IQ, the intelligence, the EQ, it's increasing emotional valence. We can talk about that. We've now got this AQ coming, the actions quotient. It can take these actions. And the fourth component is that it is going to, because it interacts with many, many people simultaneously, and increasingly many, many people in groups, it's going to have social intelligence. It's going to adjust its tone and style and content to each individual person in the team or in the group chat or in the family unit. I'm already using words which I can see are like triggering, heightened concern.
Let's be honest, like you're using this word it, right? IT, two tiny letters. And by it, you mean a global informational algorithm capability that is outside of many people's purview in terms of what it does for us personally, right?
Yes, this is a very fundamental question. When we say it, we're clearly not meaning information technology. It is this entity, this being that is emerging. And I think that's where we have to kind of wrestle with the question, when does an algorithm become something that looks more like an entity or a being?
Yeah, I was going to say, with all due respect, what gives you the right to call it a being besides the fact that you basically created it?
Don't have that right. And in fact, that's actually what the whole book is about. And I recently wrote an essay about seemingly conscious AI. And the entire premise is the next century of human existence and well-being is going to be determined by our collective ability to self-govern, something that is way more powerful than us, and decide when and if and how we say no to what, which is the opposite of the challenge we've had for the whole of human history. Science and technology has been about unleashing and revealing and proliferating and saying yes to everything. So we haven't learned that muscle as a species. In fact, it horrifies us to say no. It's anti-American, it's anti-Western values. It's like censorship.
Yeah, like my favorite cashew cheese is in my fridge. I can barely stop myself from eating it all in one sitting, Like, this is like the level of control and regulation that I have when I'm alone in my house as a grown-ass woman. And, to be honest, I think that's what we're all sort of negotiating.